So there's a new technology company in town, but in reality, they aren't quite so new at all. Iain Thomson from The Register joins us to talk about the big event put on by LeEco in San Francisco today. How's it going, Iain?
It's pretty good, Jason. Yes, it's been an interesting event. It was, in terms of lavishness, they'd hired out the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco and set up all these fantastic whiz-bang things and made what is a very, very gutsy announcement indeed.
So it was a big event. It really seemed like they, like you say, that the venue, they really went all out. It was like an hour and a half long. They didn't start small in their American debut. The company's been around for a while, though. Can you tell us a little bit about LeEco, kind of who they are exactly?
Indeed, yeah. They started in 2004. They're a Beijing-based company, but they do have a dual headquarters now, one in China, one in North America. They started out as a video streaming company and were the first Chinese video streamers to actually go public on the stock exchange back in 2010. Since then, they've expanded out. They've got their own studios making TV and films. You're shortly going to be seeing Matt Damon in a film called The Great Wall, which was funded by the company.
Oh, okay.
But they've also got into smartphones, smart TVs, and now electric vehicles, as we saw as today's launch. So they're really kind of going after Apple, Samsung, Tesla, Netflix, and pretty much anyone else they can get their hands on.
Exactly. All right. So let's talk about a little bit of, a few of their announcements, some of the products. First of all, they showed off a phone that I saw, the $399 Le Pro 3. Did you get a chance to kind of take a look at this? What did you think?
I did get a little bit handsy with it. And well, first off, $399 is the base price. But
Okay.
if you order sort of fairly early on, you can get a $100 discount on that, which brings it down to about just under $300.
Okay.
Now, I got hands-on with it. The base hardware specs are very, very impressive. It's using Qualcomm's Snapdragon 821 processor, which is the fastest mobile processor that firm produces. 4 gig of RAM, 64 gig of storage, 16 megapixel camera, USB-C. And it's, in terms of when you actually sort of tried playing with it, it's got this sort of brushed metal finish, which doesn't feel particularly high quality. I mean, none of it actually screams beautiful design in the way that the early iPhones did or some other phones do. But for the base, for the hardware that you're getting for that price, it could be a very compelling pitch because, at the end of the day, nobody really uses only sad people use their phone as fashion statements. What you actually want is a phone that does the things that you want it to do. And based on the pure hardware specs, this will do that. It's got a nice, easy Android, sort of unskinned Android system. Certainly the camera pictures looked very good indeed. It's awesomely slim. Well, it's quite slim, but it has a huge battery. I mean, it's way in advance in battery terms as anyone else. They reckon you can get at least 33 hours talk time if you really want to talk that long, but easily a couple of days without a charge, I would have thought, based on the battery capacity as it stands. So it looks quite impressive. The design needs a bit of smartening up, but for the price point, this is less than half of what Samsung and Apple and Google are selling their phones at their premium phones at the moment.
Yeah, that was kind of what I noticed, especially when you consider the Snapdragon 821 that's inside of it. That's what's in the Google Pixel as well, and it does. It's definitely the latest, the hottest, and you're going to see this in a lot of the more premium Android devices as they come along. Yet here, half the price. What do you think about viability of LeEco products in the U.S., considering this is kind of where they're beginning?
Well, this is the big question because they're a completely unknown brand. I mean, when I've talked to people on a couple of days before this, they're like, LeEco, who is that, French firm or something?
Right,
It's just like nobody had any idea who they were. And we've seen this with, Xiaomi has tried to come over here. Huawei tried briefly to get into the US market and build a brand. The conventional thinking is that unless you've actually got a solid brand that people will gel with, then you're not going to have much success in the smartphone market. But you see, I've got my doubts about this. I think the market is quite frankly ripe for a new brand. I mean, Samsung's reputation is lying in flames, quite literally in some cases. Apple is, treading water, but not really doing anything particularly spectacular. The really bad news on this launch is for Google, because, I mean, they're trying to establish the Pixel brand, and here they've got someone selling pretty much the same phone with a different casing for less than half the price. So I'm thinking these days, particularly with American income shrinking, price is going to become more important than bragging rights. And so I think they do stand a decent chance of at least building themselves a niche market and maybe expanding that out.
So in addition to the phone and all the other things you mentioned, they also released a bicycle with a built-in headlight, laser side markers. I'm not even sure what that is. GPS, a music player, a security system. I mean,
we make everything.
It's just like they threw a bunch of stuff. It's overwhelming how much stuff was announced.
Well, yes. I mean, I was thinking the same thing when they first talked about the Android bike, and then they got some suitably floppy-haired youngsters to drive one do wheelies up onto the stage on one and then drive away. But then when you actually looked at the bike on the stand itself, it did look kind of interesting. I mean, I've got a couple of friends who are pedal heads, and they spend a ridiculous amount of money on things like specially tuned sprockets and titanium bike chains and the rest of it. There is a market for people. It's kind of like gaming, the gaming market. Gamers will spend a ridiculous amount of money to get the very latest kit, and so too will cyclists. Now, it did look a bit over the top, and the laser thing, by the way, does actually make sense. They've got twin lasers running behind the bike. So if you've got a psychopathic driver coming up behind you, it gives you a little bit of warning so you can swerve out the way and save yourself some skin grafts. But I mean, it's a cute product. I don't think it's ever going to be a core product for them. But I mean, the design was pretty good. It was fairly comfy to sit on. I do kind of like the gizmos, although I wouldn't, spend money to put them on a bike, particularly in this town where, a flash bike like that is going to have a very limited half-life unless you've got a good lock on it. It does have an alarm system and a location tracker, but those things are fairly easy to defeat. So, I mean, amongst severe pedal heads, I think people will like it. I don't honestly think it's going to be a mass market design, but it's an interesting play, put it that way. I don't think it's ever going to be very particularly key to their market ambitions.
Sure. And I mean, along these lines, obviously, maybe the headline winner of the announcement is their self-driving car. They showed off the LeEco Pro. And first of all, it just kind of made me laugh a little bit that Michael Bay found a way to interfere with yet another product event. What exactly happened here?
Well, he actually, the LeEco concept car is being used in the new Transformers film, which Bay said isn't called Transformers 5, but it is the 5th Transformers film. Right. He did like a sort of video, that's it. He did a little video promo, just like, here I am in London with this car, and you can't have it because I need it right now. It was amazing, because considering the last time Michael Bay tried to do a tech promo at Samsung, he completely fluffed it. His autocue failed, and yes, he had a meltdown at CES. So I highly recommend watching that video because it's hilarious watching the guy I just can't do this and walking off stage.
It's hilarious and heartbreaking all at the same time. I showed it to Megan earlier today.
I had never seen it.
She had never seen it, and just watching it, like I got those goosebumps of I don't know, just feeling bad for someone, just like, cringy.
I know, it is cringeworthy to watch, but at the same time, he's inflicted so much bad cinema on it.
That's a good point.
So difficult to feel sorry for the guy. But yeah, I mean, it's a very flashy concept car. It has differing levels of automation, they said, so that if someone's slightly unsure about their driving, it'll take over certain aspects of it. It's not going to be fully autonomous, I don't believe, but they were kind of sketchy on details. Now, this isn't the car that's going to finally go onto the market. What they said is they'll have a commercial version of this that will be unveiled at CES, ready to go on sale, or at least the final product that will be going on sale at some point in the future. I mean, coming out of the venue, there were a couple of people driving past in Teslas, and I kind of looked at it, and it's just like, yeah, that does look like a bit like yesterday's Jam compared to this car. But I mean, this is a concept car, and they're built to look flashy. So what the final product will look like, we have yet to see. But certainly based on its design stylings, then really impressive. What we didn't see was it driving at all. And that's going to be absolutely key because everyone's up in arms about autonomous driving systems at the moment, for good reason.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So, you mentioned Xiaomi before, and like Xiaomi always has these really interesting products that look a lot like Apple products, but are, less than half the price. But then you often can't buy, you can only buy them in China. So are these things are these LeEco things going to be available globally for people to purchase?
They didn't say globally, but certainly in the US, they'll be available from November the 2nd. They're selling entirely online. So there's going to be no middlemen, no carrier deals, nothing like that. So they're purely going through their website. They've got a reward system in there. They're going to be having 2 sale days a year with amazing bargains in true Trumpian style. So, I mean, what they're doing is cutting out all of the middlemen, cutting out a lot of the marketing spend, and just relying on price to drive these forward. And at the kinds of prices that they're offering these at, I can see that actually pulling in a fair few punters. It could be rather interesting to see how this one develops.
Yeah, I mean, that ends up being the challenge, right? It's kind of like what Google has done for a long time, and now they're kind of opening it up a little bit by bringing their phone into Verizon, and maybe next year that it opens up to more carriers. But what's going to limit LeEco and others like them if they don't target the kind of carrier market, let's say, is that if what you're trying to do is penetrate the U.S. in large numbers, that's really going to limit your audience, even on price. Even if you got a great price, you're still not going to reach the people who would even know or trust buying a phone online for this lower price than what they get in the carrier, because they're just so tied into the carrier model. So distribution, at least in the short term, maybe this is a great start, and then maybe somewhere down the line, a couple of years, they're able to kind of open it up. That would really help them, I think.
We see this is one of the peculiarities of the US market, in that you do give mobile phone manufacturers do give carriers an immense amount of control, and carriers push out a large number of phones.
Yeah,
and I really don't understand it, because if you buy, the carriers aren't giving you these phones for free. They're building the purchase cost of them into a 2-year contract, which you have to sign up for. It makes so much more financial sense to actually buy the phone yourself, contractless, and then pick the carrier you want to run it on. Now, obviously, some firms like Verizon are a special case because they use, CDMA network that virtually no one else in the world uses. But if you're running a standard SIM card phone, then there's really no reason why you shouldn't be buying your own. I mean, the amount that you pay to the carriers is greater than the purchase cost of the phone generally. It's just a question of stumping up that initial cash.
Yeah.
And if the price is low enough, I think that could work.
Yep. Agreed. Sounds good. Iain Thomson, thank you for going to the event so that we didn't have to. We really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Always a pleasure.
All right. Where can people find all your work online?
We're at theregister.co.uk, and my Twitter feed is at Iain Thomson, as you see below, albeit with a very odd name. My parents and I have had words about that one.
Excellent. Thanks again, Iain. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers. See you later.
See ya.